as we continue to these changing forms, structures, routines, as life continues with its physical illness, health, vigour, strain, energy levels, tired, bright, surging, sluggish, meandering, moods, many. Sense of purpose flickering, sometimes strong, sometimes wavering. Memories, sometimes difficult, uncomfortable, sometimes bright. And scenarios, how we see ourselves, happily, contentedly, cheerfully faring on, or concerned, can I do this, how long for, doesn't fit, what seems best, There's a lot of things, conditions change, as they say, in all directions. Sometimes even directions we never really imagined existed. Energetic realm, where suddenly energies start moving through the body that we feel very tense, restricted by, or mysterious. We have all the ideas, the books, the teachings, and yet something's not working. We can't. So I think what remains, for me, is always something to keep an eye on, keep the light on, is path. It's the eightfold path of what's your path. What's the path beneath your feet? If you like, what's the path we're on right now? Within those broad boundaries of eightfold, or if you like, sila, samadhi, panya, threefold, simpler. All the different ways that can be calibrated. I'm talking the other day about upward flow, from glad appreciation of virtue to through collectedness, composure, through to insight and liberation. Beautiful Buddha teaches a path, a flow, and it can be configured in a range of ways. But it always has to start where you are. So, naturally, because we have to listen to these teachings come into our thinking minds, obviously, words, ideas. So that's the organ that gets energized. But it's only really a part of what's going to move, what's going to shift. In fact, it's almost subsidiary. It's just a tracer, and really the path is moved through by the citta, not by the thinking mind. Thinking mind points and it begins to quieten down. Then you've got to move through the citta, through the heart, through something that's non-verbal, felt, sensed, not just in the obvious way of physical sensations, but inclination, energy, aspiration, and with remembering, this is for one's welfare. So that reminding the citta, seek your welfare, however that feels for you, what's comfortable, what's sapaya, what's appropriate, what's sapaya. So even when we think of path, we can think, it's straight ahead, but so sometimes you can't go straight ahead. The highway's closed. Then if you can't go straight ahead, at least go the pretty route. Because the beautiful route is beautiful. Beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end. So you just go the beautiful way. Virtues dear to the noble ones. Joyful wisdom. It's kind of simple refrain I picked up for my 3-month personal retreat of the year. Virtues dear. Cheerful, cheering, gladdening, comforting, brightening, joyful wisdom, not frantically thrashing away, but a sense of that, let's get clear of this fog. When there's joy, you can do quite a lot of work with joy. But if you're straining, everything is difficult. So joy, learning to take joy, gladdening the citta, brightening the citta. So we begin to understand or sense how the citta is uplifted, gladdened, soothed, comforted, steadied, and what and these aren't necessarily ideas or topics or thoughts, but perceptions, senses. So the perception of silence can be deeply comforting, or it could be feel nervous. Perception of others could be comforting, or it could you feel paranoid or anxious. So it's not just that you can't immediately say, but it always has a sense of warmth. What warms, what brightens. I think this is important because basically when you heard so many teachings, the words are rattling around in your head, and so many different sets of instruction. Well, it seems a lot to do, and you just feel strained and muddled. Then you try to just aim for simplicity, and to prune it right down. Simplicity, just be present right now. Where are you? When you can't go forward, go home. Where are you now? How is that? Settling. Because the understanding is that really if we go right home, the citta's home, returns home, its energies kind of subside in going out, in volition, in doing, in getting activated. The sankhara subsides, and something beautiful in the unbinding of that, in the subsiding, something beautiful. And there's so learning to subside the volition, the intentions, to quiet them. I think very important to recollect that, because certainly I think one's instinct would be, maximum effort. But effort is a multifaceted thing. to exert, yes, to restrain, but also to gladden and let things rest in equanimity. No particular aim, just And what's the place of rest? Where do you feel comfortable? When you go home, where are you? Because my sense is that something, what got us here, was not dependent upon our intellect. You could probably learn much more Buddhism in a university than you will here. You don't have to be an expert in Buddhism to practice. I mean, some of these forest Ajahns barely read any suttas. You just have to know your citta, feel it, sense it, see through its deceptions and tricks, and keep returning. So something got us here, some faith, maybe this could be better, the citta there could be improvement. I've run around this way and that way, could be a better, that's the little lighting up of faith, and then maybe this quality of exploration and refuge and awakening, those resonances, awakening, truthfulness, they hit, they resonate. And the citta, oh yeah. We don't know the details, we just know the resonances of those perceptions. Right? Refuge, awakening, peace. Oh yeah, So you keep remembering those very primary references before you get all the details in. You go home. And how one can get a lot of action, a lot of understanding, and sometimes you just, it's not, we've lost touch with something more original. Overreach. I was noticing recently I had a little small issue in my kuti, so I just had to screw a bit of wood onto the ceiling. Okay, I got the wood. Craig very kindly prepared me a little strip of wood. Okay, very pleased with that. Then I got a chisel out and carved some grooves. Very pleased with that. Then I drilled some holes in it to put some screws in it. That's nice, pleased with that. Okay, and then we stick it on the wall, and then screwdriver. So there's electric screwdrivers, you see. So I found a screw, got that, the screwdriver, got the right bit in the screwdriver. Very good, got it there. Oh, that's it. Then I'm thinking, okay, I never used electric screwdriver. Of course, as an old man, I can say when I was it was always his hand, you do it with your hands. Just, kind of stick and you push it. Oh, electric one, that sounds good. So I stick it in the wall, stick it in the ceiling, put the screw in this bit, drill away, and it's not going in. That's funny. So I keep pushing, really push hard. It's still not going in. That's strange. Maybe there's some metal behind it. No, it's wood. Drilling, push, not going in. Oh, that's funny. So So then Tanyata looks and he says, Ajahn, you have to switch the switch to drive in rather than unwind. The moment the screwdriver is programmed to unwind the screw. So I've been using an unwind direction. I was trying to drive the screw in. Ah, yes. Memo. Examine the tool before you go any further. So examine. Come back. Where are you going? Driving like full speed and you're using the wrong direction. It's faith, returning to taking your time. Taking your time, finding your measure. And some of this sensing, this chitta sensing, the spirit of Kalyanamitta, not looking too much at the personalities or even the words, but just the presences of other contemplatives, other practitioners, in the field of blessings, the field of goodness. Yeah, obviously people have their quirks and difficulties, but this is good intention here. You can sense it. Something you feel comfortable with. So the citta has that sensing capacity. It's like a external sense, which means it senses what's around it. And it's not physically or sensorially, but if you like, emotionally or energetically, in terms of subtle energies, you feel the warm-heartedness or the generosity, even when it's not being verbalized. In fact, sometimes those who speak it are not necessarily doing it. You pick up that, and it wakens the citta's sense in that respect. This is the what needs to travel, that which can sense and appreciate the qualities of virtue, encouragement. And this is often lost, particularly in societies where relationship is extremely limited, where we're just heads, getting to work, going to school, learning things in our heads, and we forget to sense that, perhaps what's sensed around us is poisonous, or you just withdraw. People call it being shy or withdrawn. What happens is the external sense of the citta just retracts because it's not safe or comfortable or fruitful out there. So we can live in these rather shriveled states and then highly internalized, highly intense internally. And then the internal sense of the citta becomes too congested and full of thoughts and doubts and worries and passions and fantasies, and so we can live in completely internally, and we think, well, that's where you meditate. No, that's what you clarify, but you have to get the whole thing, not just an internal. You don't cling internally or cling externally. You maintain the balance of how they all come together. Certainly, when one's internal sense is quite complex or challenged, then you cultivate the external sense, which is sensing the goodwill of the lay people, the kindness, the steadiness of other summoners, And in fact, when you tune into the citta, it can be samanas from 5 years ago, because the citta doesn't operate in terms of time. It operates in terms of sanya. So it's my great good fortune, after a few years of practice from my head, really, trying to do this thing, to meet Ajahn Sumedho, Luang Por Sucitto, and Luang Por Chah. Kind of popped up on the path. So just being with both of them, I whatever parami or merit I have, seemed to mean I could actually pretty immediately have whole undivided attention from first Luang Por Sucitto, just not because it just happened. About 2 or 3 hours. And it was just, he was saying a few careful, reflective things, but it's the presence, the sense of stability, warmth, gentleness, firmness that wasn't hard, like a firmness of confidence, and an inclination that wasn't kind of pushy, but was gently encouraging, gladdening, reaching, kind of, so you could feel that. And this was like, what did he say? I've forgotten. And yet, that experience remains, being held in something. And kind of where I was at, I was expecting some master to kind of tell me what was wrong with me, or right with me, or I should do this, or I should do that. And it was no, it was just wherever you are, it's just encouraging it. And a little while later, I had the immense good fortune to meet Luang Por Chah. And, if you can get a brief biography of Luang Por Chah, you think, my goodness, this is formidable. When you learn the details, just the resolve, the effort, the energy, the determination, and the ability to endure, just, no way I can't match that. No way. Totally beyond my reach. And so you feel a bit nervous and even kind of slightly frightened, intimidated. This kind of immense being. But then during the short time that I had, when he was around in Britain, I think I was probably the only one, I don't know particularly, that he specifically, on a one-on-one, directed his attention to and talked to. Mostly it was in groups, 2s and 3s, or whatever. But the occasion came when it's just kind of in his room, and I was kind of thinking, and it's just this, and of course, because his English was minimal, my Thai was minimal, and somehow, despite all that, the transmission of warmth and encouragement and was so powerful, it still stays with me today, and I feel myself deeply moved by the generosity and the, of the thousands of people, I don't know how many knew, to give that undivided time to someone who couldn't even speak his language, pretty confused, uptight, tense. It's just making you feel holy life is beautiful, warm, funny, rich, profound. You're in it. Let it take you. Yeah, so we tend to imagine, I guess what I do, sort of the path is something you do, and certainly that's part of it, I guess. But also the path itself, path factors have their own potency. That is, once you start to enter it, it kind of, if you're listening deeply, it's sort of the energies of that actually begin to move you along. And so we have to sometimes quieten our own thinking and ideas and projections and just listen up and take in what's immediately available, which could be a memory, of course. Whatever actually the citta brings up when we come to that place of poise and presence, we're in a sense of what, and just open to that. So, then the path factors start to move through you. This may sound mysterious, and perhaps the language is confusing. But if you even just intellectually consider it, if there's this sense of anatta is so fundamental, and the sense of the individual identity is something that's seen as so tricky and hazardous, who's doing this? All this stuff. So and it's about dismantling, deconstruction, unconditioning, not just unconditioned, but dismantling structures. There's a sense in which the faith to be able to let go of the known and the planned and the conceived and the sense of direction and open. And listen. The receptive sense. The citta has volition. In other words, it can send things out. And we often are doing that. But it also is attentive, it's receptive, it has awareness, it has knowingness, it can take in. And this is also a fundamental aspect. And certainly when I started to live under Luang Por Sucitto, then at first I couldn't get what he was talking about, because what I was doing in meditation was following a particular system of focusing attention on this point and that point, and then tuning into this and maintaining that. He didn't do any of that. And what are you supposed to do? He says, well, just listen to how it is. He says, huh? Well, what are you supposed to do about it? Well, notice things arising and passing, and he's still saying it. Slightly different tonalities and different atmospheres come in. I mean, he's held that. And if you get, what's on the next page? Maybe there isn't a next page. Just sink more deeply into the meaning and begin to deconstruct the projections, and then maybe the path itself arises as a sort of stream. You find yourself moving along towards relinquishment, towards letting go, towards devotion, gladness. And towards bringing forth what's beautiful for others, the great heart. Certainly one of Luang Por Sucitto's keynotes was about listening, learning to listen. Something Luang Por Chah also talked about, learning to listen. So you use the ear faculty, because the ear faculty is more receptive than the visual faculty. The visual faculty always gives us an arrow of direction. If you notice the way that the visual consciousness always aims towards a point. So we're walking along a corridor with an aim at the end of it. You know, your streets do the same thing, paths do the same thing. We live in an arrow, and the aim is to get to the point of the arrow, where the bullseye is, Nibbana in bullseye. And you keep running along this track, moving along this track. It's a visual construction, and because we're probably, generally human beings are more visual than auditory creatures, so that becomes the template of how the mind operates and how the mind conceives things. Forward to one point, somewhere else, get on, and quicker, maybe it takes a while, but you're going to get there in the end, kind of thing. So that's we don't even think it. That's the kind of assumption we make. Probably our language does the same thing. As soon as you think of path, you think of, end of it. But the aim of the path is to deconstruct. So it's and deconstruct that model, perhaps, suggestion. So you come to the listening mode, slightly different, because the listening is global. It's not, you don't listen in front of you, or you listen all around you. It's a global sense. There's a sense in which when you tune into that, the citta moves into overall rather than directive. And listening and receiving impressions, and the citta moves into that. And so Luang Por Sucitto particularly made a big thing out of listening deeply to the base of hearing consciousness. Sound of silence, he called it. I call it listening to listening. So you can turn it back to that. And then the babbling of the citta, the babbling of the thinking mind can dissolve into that silence. And you can walk around with it, you can sit on a bus doing it, you can go to a meeting doing it, you can, it's a very portable model. So I practice with that. I found that bringing it into the bodily sense, so I tend to listen with the body rather than the ears. It's not quite the same thing. It's like what I call the exteroceptive sense and the interoceptive sense. So the body senses, you come to the edge of your skin, particularly when you're walking. This is useful because walking definitely goes very visual without even acknowledging it. We walk on paths, straight paths. So it's really set up for that model of directive, visually. So you walk, and of course we always walk forward, we don't walk circular. But as far as the body goes, you're sensing your skin and the balance, there's no forward about it. There's just senses, energies moving. So you turn your eyes down just to what's necessary to maintain sense where you are visually, and even soften the gaze so it's kind of soft focus, not a sharp focus. And you tune into balance, experience of what happens as you move, energies shift, and through your skin. You get the bodily senses and you listen into that. And they have no sense of getting anywhere, therefore they can't fail. Because wherever you are, there it is. same model accrues. Yeah. And it helps to discharge what can arise with walking meditation. We get into I call it doctor's waiting room, up and down, pacing up and down, and then it gets a bit monotonous, one feels trapped. And then here we go again, here we go again, here we go again. Maybe that doesn't happen for you, but certainly, that happened for me. There's this sense of, feel caged in by it. And then the mind doesn't want to do it, it wants to break out. And just coming back to the quality of movement, how the tissues, the proprioceptive sense, how the body synchronizes its movements. So it's fluid, comfortable. Fluid and comfortable. And the arms, and it's the whole body. Because if we contemplate the whole body in walking, then certainly the shoulders, the whole torso also participates in maintaining the balance of the body so we don't fall over. And you don't have to do it. You have to relax the aim and the intent and the ideas of feet and legs and path, and just let the body find its way. I found that particularly helpful when I lived in the forest, going back to the forest when it was dim or dark. We can't see very much. And just walking, sometimes I have to walk quite carefully, and maybe even not use a lamp, just sensing, and everything comes alive. Oh yeah. And there's a certain joy in that, because the body has to most subtly, I say vibrate, but suddenly be energized, because it's asked to wake up. And the citta can sense that. So there's a strong synchronicity between the citta and the subtle body, which is the body's energy systems. And they have citta effects. The citta feels alert, not driven, comfortable, tuned into the present, the only place the body knows. It doesn't know time. It knows presence. As it becomes present, the present expands, sensed, steadied. And one maintains that as the waves of memory, thought, mental proliferation break over it. And just by maintaining that and not feeding, going out, struggling, analysing, not messing with it, the waves are no longer fed with energy and they begin to subside. One's maintained one's balance in the midst of flow, whole midst of changing conditions. So one can listen that way, receptively. I found when I first practiced, I didn't do any chanting. I had to learn chanting. And when I learned chanting, I kind of started to study Pali, and particularly the pronunciation, the stressing, the way the Pali language is formed. So I take time to study pronunciation, particular short, long, stressed, unstressed, quite simple. And then the chanting, it actually is more like a musical experience, not just presenting information, but a sonorous. And listening to it, you could feel the resonances in the body. So I tend to tune into the resonances in the body, kind of let the words come out, sometimes not even get the words, but just get half the words and let it build up. But maintain the sense of the resonance and the flow. And let the words be built upon something that you can feel, not just think. And that has an effect of devotion. It opens the heart. And again, there's no going forward or backward. Devotion is a beautiful celebration of sacred presence. And we can put the Buddha, we can offer that to the Buddha, we can bring Buddha into that. So, however, these are just ways I've worked with things. To be aware of the narratives that one's mind generates about the future, about yourself, comparing yourself with others, getting too tangled up with knowing too much, too many words and ideas. Be careful of that and just begin to find out your balance, where you are, where the heart rises, and that relationship of encouragement and goodwill, internally, externally. And then you're creating the proper birthplace and nest and training place for the path factors to arise.